Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Career Mode Podcast. I have with me Kirby Schepp for an exciting episode. Kirby has been coaching basketball for nearly 30 years now, and with an incredible experience of the Canada basketball, and also many international tournaments. Kirby, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. It's great to be here talking to you.
Sure. So let's dive into a lot of things here that I have planned. I'll actually just start with how you started coaching, how that developed for you, and what's the story behind the notorious coach that we have here now.
I don't know about notorious, but it's yeah. I mean, I think I've always had a passion for the game as a player. And growing up, and shortly after high school, so I was probably 17, 18. I took on a team with my brother where we coached with what we call the junior high team. So that was grade, I think it was a grade 7, 18, something like that. And just at the school, and did it for fun one season. And at that point certainly had no clue what we were doing. We just happened to have a bunch of talented kids, and we were 13 and no one won the league. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is fun. So, who knows? We didn't have the talent that I wouldn't have gotten the defense. And I didn't play in a little bit in college, and started coaching. And then when I was finished playing college, I was asked by a local high school again for this 16, 17-year-old kids to come help out. There was an older guy who was trying to retire, and I was just kind of helping as an assistant, and I helped him run practice once or twice. He after the second practice, he said, "Oh, you listen, I can't be here this practice. You're gonna have to run it on your own a little bit." I said, "Okay, sure." So he couldn't come, had some appointment or something, and so I ran the practice, and then he stopped showing up. So I was left with this team 14 years later. I was still coaching in high school, and then running clubs and being assistant at university level. And yeah, then it just became, I started coaching all the time, getting everything I could out of my hands on everything I could, coaching 5-6 teams a year for over 20 years, I guess. I was going at a rate of 5 teams a year. So yeah, a year of getting lots of reps. So yeah, somehow I got pushed into school and I never left.
Yeah, that happened. Yeah, so I guess when you start to do things well, and the coach left as soon as he saw that you could keep running it, right? So and just to look on that, if you had to overlook the past 30 years, like what would you say were the things that made you get to where you are right now? Of course, with like many international competitions for Canada basketball, so great features, right? And also I would like to point how creative and always thinking about the problem and solution that you're trying to find, and we saw that the other day. So something, I don't know, were you like that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, how my kind of philosophy changed. I think when I was a player in university, a coach by the name of Bill Whitler, who was a really, really good teacher of the game, right? He just had a really unique way of taking a larger game and breaking it down into its parts and teaching us the game. It's not unlike the way I do, but in a little bit more rigid, kind of structured way. And then I think my own influences a little bit in just the way I played, and even the weaknesses I had. So I don't think I was great at necessarily reading the game. I think I didn't play enough. I did a lot of, when I was a kid, going to the court by myself and just shooting and working on skills and just alone. And I think that didn't translate into reading and decision making and things like that as much. And I think that experience kind of triggered in me the need for those kind of things. And then I, just talking about just advancing in coaching, getting opportunities. And the biggest thing that I think when I look back, that I just didn't say no. Like I didn't say no to any opportunities. Every opportunity I got to coach or to be with someone else who was coached, I said yes. I said yes to every single opportunity, and threw myself in. And the lesson I always say to other people is, a lot of times we have an expression where it's like sometimes you get opportunities, you have to be in the right place at the right time, right? And I always think of that. The way to be at the right place at the right time to get an opportunity is to be in lots of places, lots of times, right? Just be everywhere, and then you have a better chance of being in the right place at the right time, right? So I think that's what I was doing.
Awesome. No, that's great. And, but actually starting where the point that you touched on, you have a great clinic. I mean, many of great clinics, but one that was definitely way more successful than the rest, I would say. Teach them how to play. I would say part one, because then you did 4 years later, was it another one? But so I really see that you try to teach them how to play through games approach, to constraining and limiting the game. So your teaching point is defined and redefined, I would say. So what's the basics or the foundation to implement that?
I mean, I think you have to, the realization for me was that you as the coach or the teacher, you're not providing every single solution possible to these kids. I think once you realize that I can't give them every solution, and they have to experience it, and they have to, and the part of them making mistakes and seeing outcomes, good or bad, is a really important part of the process of learning for them, right? And then the other concept is that fits in with that is that we're putting them in situations where I'm actually not teaching them, right? But the game is teaching them, right? And I think to me, that's a much more powerful way for them to learn and experience. Now, the caveat that coaches have to accept is sometimes that's slower. So I can tell you, all right, you're gonna do this, then you do this all the time, right? And I can be constantly telling you what to do from the sidelines, things like that. And that might be an easier way to have success immediately right now, but it's not a long run. It's not a transferable way into other situations and other problems that they're going to see in the game. It's not continuous, right? It can't sort of keep going. So we're trying to create situations where they can just learn, right? And we can sort of have conversations with them. One, I think it has greater retention of knowledge and understanding of the game. And just two, it's more fun.
Yeah.
Right? Ultimately, we want them to have fun. This is sport after all, right? It's supposed to be fun. So, we want them to have fun and do things and keep playing. And so, that's probably where that came from me, at least the philosophy of it.
Oh, sure. No, that's awesome. But I would like to ask, so of course trying to do, let's say, let's call it drills or games, whatever, that teach the game, but is that your only, of course not the only way of teaching, but also, so my question goes, you also use, for example, guided defense, let's say, to teach offense, or you prefer to play with the rules or constants of the game, whatever it is, to teach it? Is there a balance between them?
Yeah. So both, I think. When we're learning certain fundamental skills, for instance, we'll do a lot of guided defense, right, and show them, and they'll be, within the basic component of something. I think that there's what we call if-then decision making, right? If this happens, then I'm going to do that. If this happens, then I'll do that, right? And I think that's where guided defense kind of comes into play, right? And then I think the next load is something that's constraints. So you let the players decide with limited things, right? So I might be, we're working on pick and roll, and I would say to them, okay, we'll say you must hedge every single time, right? Something like that, right? And then so now the limit to decisions are much smaller, or it's just one decision to make. But then now we slowly kind of release the reins a little bit, allow them to do different things, so that the offense needs to make different decisions, or many more decisions, right? Things like that. So I think that there's a progression there normally of guided defense where I can control the decisions that they're making, and then you kind of can let go of some of that control a little bit, right?
For sure. And then, so, but precisely on that, my question then becomes because you seem like a creative guy, and I'm sure you like your players to also be creative. So within that guided defense, how do you transform the if then this to if then whatever solves the problem? Is there any way you have to do it, to work on it? How to try to implement this?
I think, and it's always a challenge because I think especially early on, sometimes I'll try to not tell them all the solutions, right? And they just, can figure like how are you going to do it, or sometimes we just ask them to identify the problems more than tell them the solutions, right? So you're really, what you're doing is you're exposing the if that you want them to look at, but you're not telling them the then, right? So if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Right. So where it's like, okay, so here's the issue. They're doing this. So what can we do? And then you're just basically shining a light on the problem they have to solve, and then let them play. So for instance, I always think a great example of this is zone offense, right? And zone offense, especially in America, in the United States, is one of the most popular clinics because so many youth teams play zone, and everyone wants more zone offense. They're always flocking to coaches that are going to show them this great zone offense, right? So, and I've never understood that because my teams, we don't really have a zone offense, but what we do is I teach them about zones, and I teach them how the zone works and where it's weak and where it has limitations and where it's strong, right? And then we just go, okay, so how can we solve this problem? And eventually the players will just kind of figure it out. Oh, putting two people where there's one isn't just a problem for that zone, right? And then hopefully they can get to a point where they can just play and do a few conceptual things and understand how the zone works and then how to beat the zone, right? So I think you can transfer that philosophy into lots of parts of the game. Right?
For sure, no, it makes a lot of sense. And then just trying to make the transfer, because you mentioned that being specific and providing the solution early on to the players is probably the best method, but you cannot do it for such a long period of time. So then my question is, how do you do it for the international competitions with under 17 and 19? I'm assuming the window to work with the players is much smaller, especially in a big country like Canada. So how do you try to not change completely the coach you are?
It's such a huge challenge, and you do change the way you coach. You have to, because you're right. Our windows are very, very short. So we put players together for 2 weeks, let's say. Then we'll travel to the competition, and we'll have a week of practice there, probably, and then we'll play in a world championship. And the longest summer we ever had was 6 weeks, including the World Championship, right? So, which was in Crete at the time. You just can't put so much detailed systems in, right? I think you have to. In some ways, it's good. There's differences with it's like you have less time, right? But you have more talent, and in many ways more resources, right? So. And as you know, probably it's the more talent you have, the less you have to put in structure, right? Because they can just play, right? So that I think is the benefit of you putting us in. But you really have to, and I have to fight my tendency to, I want to break them down and play 3-on-3 and play, for large segments of time. And well, I don't. We only have 4 practices. We play once, right? And I can't really do that. So I think your focus is on less on actions and tactical, and more on spacing and just getting them to understand where we want them to be and which players we want to be where, and simplify the game, right? But then give them creativity within that simplification, right? So there's much less things we can do. We also generally, this is just because Canada, I don't know if it doesn't apply to other ones, is we do less defensive systems, I would say, but we're generally blessed with pretty good athletes too. So we get into real simple things. Now, many of our kids come from one region of the country where they maybe are part of some youth development things, so they might have some context, but which helps, some of those kids. But then there are lots of kids who are very fragmented. They're all over. High school basketball in the U.S. They can be in every region of the country. Many times even our most talented players have some of our weakest emotions, right? So there's lots of that challenge where you don't know what they're going to do coming in. They may know very, very little. So
They're full of players and from many different backgrounds. And so,
sure.
and in that selection process, what are the things that come to your mind when making the roster? And so my question is is it just the 15 or 12 most talented guys you can have, or do you have to feel differently because the 11th guy or the 12th, whatever it is, won't play that much time, so you need specific things from that?
Yeah, it's a really tough. So I would say what you just said there. Normally, when you make my regular college team, that's probably a big consideration, right, in terms of roles and where they're going to play and that, and can we keep them happy and that kind of thing. So the national team provides. It's probably the biggest challenge. So I have coached almost exclusively with the national team program in the youth systems, right, U16 to U19. I did a brief stint. We coached the Commonwealth Games team, which were the young professionals. But we look at 2 things with team selection at that level, and we sort of have to. Is you have to ask them 2 questions. Can this player help us win this competition, right? And then 2 is, do they have potential to play for outsiders one day? Do they have potential to play in the Olympics or a World Championship or those kind of things? So, as you know, like at a 17 level, we had guys huge. Like they had my coach, but on the U16 this year they had Kirby, who's I believe he's the largest, the tallest, Guinness World Record. I believe he's the tallest 15-year-old ever in the history of the world, and he's 7'5" or 7'6" or something, right? So now Olivier, as Olivier that age has his challenges with movement, right, at that big. So in some ways he might not be ready to help you win right now, although he's pretty good, but he has the chance to play in a senior national team one day, right? So you have to take that, right? So that's my perspective anyway. So now, but then there's, as you go down your roster a little bit, your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th guys, those guys they're probably never going to play for an Olympics in Canada, right? But can they help us win right now? Can they play a role? Can they be 3-point shooters standing in the corner? Can they do those kinds of things, right? Maybe they're an undersized post, or you can tell they're what we call a yellow banana, right? They're sort of fully grown. They're not getting any bigger, but they're 6'6", thick, strong, and you're like, they may not translate to world championships, but they're pretty good right now. Right? They can push around that 7'5" guy, right? So I think you have to balance. There's yeah, you've gotta, and many times you don't know. I've got to make a selection from, we'll bring in athletes from all regions of Henry that we pick through our network, and there'll be maybe 40 kids in camp, and you'll have, say 4 days to get down to 12 and pick a national team. So sometimes you make mistakes.
For sure. No, I assume that it can never be perfect, but it makes a lot of sense the way you describe that balance within the roster. It's interesting as well because here we are facing many of the same struggles, of course, in a different setup, in a different scenario. We don't only have four days to choose, but there are kids who are talented and could help us in the future and be professional, whatever the circumstances. But at the same time, we must find a way to give them minutes, but in a context where it's not that hard for them. Because if we choose them, let's say they are talent, but then we choose them for one of our best under 14, under 16 team, and then they have very few minutes, and the minutes they have are not successful enough, then that can lead to not being that happy, potentially leaving or not being so motivated for practices. So is there anything that helps you or that you've summed up from your experiences?
I mean, yeah, that challenging them, and I think you have to build those relationships all through the process at every level of coaching, right? Where because they're going to face adversity, right? So you have that kid who doesn't play or didn't play much and challenging motivation-wise. They have to understand the bigger piece. It's amazing when I look at it back and maybe someone arrogant would say, they look at it and say, well, you have a chance to play the world championship, but look at you, but you do this. I know. We've been wrong on that a ton, right? Like, I was part of the coaching staff that we cut Schepp Alexander, right? The Oklahoma City, who's an NBA superstar now. I mean, he's a young stud. He's one of the best young players in the league, right? We cut him from I guess it would be a U19 national team when he was 17. Now the next year he made it as a U18, so he would have been young for that. But we cut him, and I actually don't even remember him. Next year, someone said we cut him, and I was like, "Are you sure?" I don't remember him. Like, what I mean? And you don't know. I mean, there was a young man who Nate Garland, who was, we had him on 2 national teams, and we didn't play him very much. He was a catch and shoot kid, and he had spot role minutes here and there, but we didn't give him a lot of playing time. And he played in the NBA last year, so he bounced around the G League, and he actually got on an NBA roster last year. So, I mean, we're wrong. I think you have to tell those players that we're gonna do it as we can here, and we're gonna invest all we can, regardless of where you are on the roster. We're gonna try to make this the best experience possible, and try to make you the best player we can for the future. But also know we're gonna be wrong about a couple of you, right? We might be right about most of you, but for sure we're going to be wrong about a couple of you. And if you're unhappy, well, guess what? You can just have the mentality of we're the one you're wrong about, and you're going to prove us wrong. Great. Go prove me wrong. Great.
It's a great way of putting things. Just to finish, maybe the very short windows of prepare for any international competition, and also been to under 16 to young professionals, as you said, with the Commonwealth Games. So how much of that like very limited time is spent on looking at your opponents, if any? Because at some point players are good enough and talented enough for sure in Canada to be looking at scouting and video, but at the same time, if you have that limited space, and I remember I looked up, and for the Commonwealth Games we had 6 games in 10 days or something like that, so not spaced at all. So how do you do it? How do you
Yeah, so there's a couple factors there, right? The age of the athlete, right? The experience that you're trying trying to give them, right? And what can they digest, right? So Commonwealth Games, we had 20, and actually all these guys were either still in college or right at the end of their college career, or they just graduated trying to get their first pro contracts that year. So unbelievable group of guys that we overachieved. Should never have beaten New Zealand and been the final of that tournament, but because they were all pros and Olympians and somehow shot the lights out and beat them. But great experience for those guys. I'm happy. And many of them went on to play. Most of them are playing professional somewhere now in the world. Having a great experience. So we knew like those guys, they would have had extensive starting course in their colleges and universities, and they can digest more, right? So we gave them more information for that reason. Now, the tendency, of course, would be, well, let's simplify for a 17, 18U team to where we really give them very, very little information and just a few key, maybe it's, shooter, driver, right hand, left hand, that's it. And here's the main way that maybe they're going to try to score, or they're going to play zone and man, or whatever, right? Just really basic stuff. And I think there's value in that. But then you think about it a little bit, and what my perspective was, at that age, one was not just about winning. We're trying to provide them with an experience that's going to prepare them for the future. So they're 17, 18 years old, but they're the most talented kids in our country. They're going to go play some, right? There's going to be one or two that will play in the NBA. There's going to be many others who will play in the top leagues in Europe, and we have had great professional careers. We want them to have the experience. So sometimes when we introduce to them a full study, just even though we know they're not going to digest it, but we want them to have that experience so that later on in life, when they see those things, they'll see it. Yeah, it's not new for them, right? So, but at the same time, we'll show it to them and say, okay, here's full study for you if you want to look at it. But then we'll really focus on just a few things. Okay, here's out of all this stuff you just looked at, here's the one thing we want to get across, and we'll focus on that a little bit. That's more about helping us be successful right now. So, yeah, and it's certainly a challenge, and we would put that together. For us, it's managing roles on our staff, right? So when we go into a six game and 10-day situation, we pre-assign scouts for assistant coaches, where someone's doing game one. Say I have 3 assistants, they're doing game 1, game 2, game 3, and then the first one's doing game 4 again, so they can sort of, as soon as their job is done, they can refocus, and they're just supporting for the other ones, right? So they can do a really good job and present me with certain things. So I'll give you an example where I was an assistant coach it was myself and a guy named Scott Morrison, who was assistant to the Celtics, a guy named Dane McNeely, and we had a really, really good staff. And that was in, I think it was at Summers, Colorado Springs. That was in 4 degrees. But yeah, it was, we're looking at different scouting reports, and we have everything from all the baselines and sideline outs and different things that we don't give the players. It's just too much information, right? But it was I think we were playing Argentina. It was a key moment where they were running a sideline and a bounce play, and there was a certain kind of version of it that I could identify by their line that was run. And it was fourth quarter, 2-point game, maybe 3 minutes left or something. And it was nice because, of course, Argentina kids speak Spanish, so they didn't even know what I was saying. So you don't get any information, but then I can stand up on the sideline and say, hey, Johnny, he's going to pop out here, cheat, leave here, shoot this gap, and steal this pass, right? I know what's going to happen. And I can say it because Spanish kids don't know what I'm saying, right? So sure enough, he shot the gap, steal, bam, dunk, was press full court, another steal, and it changed the game around. I remember like other coaches are like, yeah, but it's one of those things where I probably could have told him that pregame, but you're coaching youth, it's too much. You have to keep. So we as a staff have to know everything.
Yeah. Then
we have to decide how much we get, right? So,
yeah. it's a great point there, and also I guess that translates to how much you are learning and managing throughout the years, right? Because with some,
Right.
even at the same age group, let's say, with some group of kids, you might be able to do something and give them a little bit more, and with others, not that much.
Yeah, and even within the team, right? So within the team, you start to realize which kids handle more than others, which kids maybe can handle it but shouldn't. They just need to play freely, and they just listen. You don't worry about it. You just go play, right? So we're a really talented athletic kid pretending some star. He just needs to go compete and free his mind, right? Rather than do stuff. Yeah.
Oh, great points there. I'll just actually throw the question now. How, from your perspective as a coach and having this career, what's your perfect way of learning? So I'll put some options here, but just to say that, and actually I put it on YouTube. And yeah, we had a coach called chairman the other day. Reviewed some other coaches that Francisco Nani, our previous guest, was leading, and it was very fun. I really took a lot from the call. But so I'll give you four options, and then maybe you can just say whatever you prefer, and you can criticize whatever option.
Sure.
But so either Zoom calls like the one we did, watching clinics. Directly speak with coaches, let's say around Canada or wherever you can go, and then watching other leagues basketball, so basketball from other parts of the world.
Okay. Well, I should say this right now, but I'm going to say my last place was Zoom call, unfortunately.
Okay.
So although, I mean, this can be a different form, or this is one of the podcast form, right, where you're having a conversation. And I think they all provide value. Certainly, if these you can, as a coach, they can, and I do this all the time. I'm listening to podcasts every time on my drive to work, on my commutes, and you can hear something and you can pause it, think about it, right? I think there's value there in that reflection, but sharing. I want to say speaking for sure, and the hard part is you don't get that on right? So for me, coaches will, this will come in my office, we can just walk out on the floor and we're having a conversation. We can talk about space and different angles and different things like that, where we can just have just open, honest conversation one-on-one, and we can just go where we want to go, which is similar to what we're doing right now, right? So certainly clinics are good, although clinics are often not so graded, like they're not. So hit and miss, right? You get a lot of times with just coaches tell stories, and that's not really much for learning, right? You can't really control sort of what they're doing, but I think it's very rare that, I think it's so rare to find good clinicians, right? I think that's why I try so hard to do the best I can at it, teach a little bit. And, if you can ever, by the way, if there's ever, I heard the other day, and I got to say this on another podcast, go back and listen. If you're a young coach, go back and listen to Don Meyer clinics. Don Meyer is an American college coach who's passed away a number of years ago now, but he did dozens of them. Which are probably available somewhere. Meyer, Don Meyer, but he really influenced me, and I watched all of his clinics as a young man. It was really interesting stuff, and just the way he sort of did things in that business. And then I would say watching leagues is less so because. Not because there isn't value. I think there's lots of interesting tidbits on sort of the way they play, but you don't get from that is the way they teach, right? And the way it's conceptually broken down. Sometimes you'll watch a game play and you'll see things work more because of the players rather than because they just work, right? So you don't want coaching,
So you don't know the background,
right?
Right.
And the opposite is they won't work. You'll be like, oh, that's right. So I know there's a lot of conversation about Europe. There's some more players that are like nexting pick and roll coverage and running. And to me, it's a run and jump defense, right? It's the same concept as run and jump, right? You're running, jumping, sliding over, it's all the same sort of concept. Players may look at it, I think there's value in that. I think it really depends on the type of players you have. And it's easy to look at that and say, oh, that looks really cool because that was like the best one the entire season, right? And say, I'm going to do that. Wow, that's very blocking, right? So,
for sure. But it's very interesting what you said, especially between speaking directly with coaches and Zoom calls. I mean, I definitely would say I'll share the same opinion. Of course, the past maybe 1 year and a half, the Zoom calls were very beneficial because we were at home. But also, it gives you, it's interesting because you said you have a limited time and opportunity to talk with other coaches, right? So talking in person, hopefully it will happen one day when you come to Germany, but it's limited. You cannot do it that much. And I think that the Zoom calls has offered so many, insights and things that you can pick that other people are doing, and then at the same time you can focus. For example, the call we had the other day, we were sure that the people who were there were actually very interested in that specific topic of playing golf. It gives you
it really has opened it up though, right? Like, so calls like that, I think one great thing that's come out of this is we've normalized sharing in this way, and we've normalized these conversations, and we've made the world smaller, which is a fantastic opportunity, right? So like, I think I've had, before COVID, I had maybe 2 or 3 Skype calls with coaches or with someone that, was connected with me, and we just started talking, that kind of thing. And now, during COVID, I've had dozens of calls like this, or calls like we had last week, or clinics that I've presented at or watched, or sort of normalized sharing, and around the world, right? With people all over the world.
Yeah, for sure. And so now let's go into the last question of every episode. But first of all, thanks a lot for your time, for your insights. There's a lot of value here, and so the question is, and this makes even more sense since you have on your background for the ones that are listening, a huge map of the world. So what is something you've taken from other cultures, and you can choose either basketball-wise or from a life perspective?
Food. Come on. I love food. I love cooking. And yeah, so
From where? That's the question.
Oh well, come on. There's an obvious answer there. Italy is the best food, and everyone knows that. But having said that, I've had great food all over the world, and different things I've been able to try, spices. Yeah, but certainly some of the Western European. Has probably been the biggest influences. And South America, I remember, I'll go back to Italy, having great meals served from family style every day, and then going down to South America. I can remember being in a tiny little shop with this old lady making handmade empanadas, right, and wanting to see my reaction as I ate her homemade empanada, phenomenal, right? Where you get great, and then understanding that, I'll bring it back to basketball. That there's so much universal there, and you look sometimes at the other side of it. I live, right? Like I live over there, and you're over there, and there's some people over there, where it's like, you think of it as being so different, right? And I think what you start to learn the more you travel is that we're all the same. We all kind of have the same concepts. And we all similar to basketball unites us, and the game is very similar in the way we do things, and coaching and that kind of stuff, but we're also all the same in terms of we want the best for our families and loved ones, and we want a chance to go somewhere and be something, and we all love to share a glass of wine and have a great Italian.
Yeah, that's a great point with the traveling, and in the end, the basic needs are all the same, and the way we look to the future might be, digested differently from a society point of view, but later on, or the deep need and motivation is all the same. Now, but now you allow me to change now. So coming back to basketball, is there, after your international experiences, is there anything you've come up from, let's say, Egypt or Germany when you were here, that you've taken and said, we must do a better job of doing what, I don't know, this Argentinian team does? And maybe not so much tactically, but, anything like that.
Yeah. So I'll say my very first international trip was 2009. We coached the United. I could probably, honestly, I could probably give you one lesson on every trip that I've gone on. So we'll go through. I don't want to spend this good long 3-hour podcast here, but so I think one of the first comes to mind. The first one was I sat down and I wish I could tell you this guy's name. I don't know his name because it's so long ago. But we were in Argentina and I sat down with a guy who was he was a technical director of basketball Argentina, the National Federation, and he was there watching. We were playing the U16 World Qualifying Tournament. Our very first time in Mendoza. Mendoza, great wine, by the way. You ever drink Malbecs? It caused me to drink. Let's go back to the food thing. It caused me to drink Malbec for 3 years. I love drinking Mendoza, but so. Sat down and I asked him because it was right at the end of Argentina had that golden generation, right? Of Manu Ginobili, Luis Scola, Pepe Sanchez, I don't know, all those different people, right? That whole group of guys, right? Which were very successful and they won multiple World Olympic medals and things like that. So how did that occur? Obviously they had just a lack of they came here at that time a little bit, but also there were some things that they did, and I don't even know. So I'm saying this like it's true. This is just what this guy told me to stand, so it may not even be true. But he said one of the things they tried to mandate was in the youth leagues that they would play full court man-to-man defense at every level all the time. But they would say you're not allowed to play zone. You're not allowed to just run back and pick up half court, but everyone must pressure the ball. And he said, like, why we do that is it's going to develop the kids. Nothing is going to develop you more than having to execute your skills against the defense full court at that pace. And their team, to their credit, did the same thing. They pressured full the whole game. Even when they played the Americans, who physically it's like pros playing against youth, right? It's not even close. But they pressured the whole game, and they got up to them, and it didn't hurt them too much. And so they kind of got into the ball. And that really made an impact on them in terms of, like putting them in that situation from a really young age is going to develop them quicker, right? And getting kids in situations to develop them quicker is, I saw the value of that at a really, really young age, I guess, right? But then there was all kinds of, I can remember playing in Spanish national team a number of years later, and the concept of, they were driving, not to shoot, which for North America, not to score a layup, but they were driving to throw it. They were playing offense with the entire maybe it's a different team. They were playing with the concept of just trying to draw two people and then playing and then letting the ball skip and play one more, right? Things like that. Whereas our kids, they drive to score all the time, right? That's all they do: drive to score, right? So where they were driving to get two on them to make a play, and a little light bulb moment for me about how could I expand that into other things, and just really realizing that really all innovation sports, soccer, team handball, ice hockey, field, like they're trying to do is create 1-on-2s and 2-on-1s. That's the entire game. Yeah. Right? That's the entire game, right? I'm trying to get two people on me so I can create a 2-on-1 for someone else. Right? And when you start to click and you start to realize, right. How about a flight to other states? Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. No, that's great, and I believe with all the international experiences and the traveling, and also again, if you are so, if you always look to the whys and try to find solutions and create plans, which as you said happens usually often for you, then you go and watch another team playing or another competition, whatever it is, and try to understand what really happens. That's a great way to put it. I think that's very valuable for any coach listening. And I would say thanks again, Kirby, for your time. It's been great. Hopefully, we can keep shortening the distance between Canada and Europe and to learn more from your place. And any
I
feedback?
hope we I hope I can come over there soon. I'd love to, as you say, I love doing less international coaching now, although I'll get back out to it soon, I'm sure. And but yeah, I'm always looking for opportunities to come over there and have a basketball conversation and try your food and wine.
Yeah, yeah. That's your motto. Seems
Right.
great. Any feedback you have for anyone listening, please let us know, and see you next time.